Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now if you didn't see, a couple of weeks ago myself and Hambini reached out to you guys and asked you if you had any questions for our up and coming Q&A. Thanks for all the responses, there were absolutely loads and we did have to make a short list. We've still got shortlisted questions that we didn't do in episode 1 ready for episode 2, so try and keep the questions to a minimum in the comment section below. We've got enough as it is, or if you've got any really good ones then okay, let us know down below and I'll put you on the short list. But cheers and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so after we'll do 3, 2, 1 and then clap. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Did you clap?
Yeah.
Oh, fucking hell, delay on it. I'll sort it out later. Right, I'll start off.
We have to do the intro.
This is going to be, I think, episode. Oh, do you want to do that together? Okay, so you doing hello Hambini fans and I'll stick it in.
Hello Pete Talk fans! And welcome. God, Pete Talk. I'm just a knobhead, but anyway. Right.
Ranty and swearing is therapy for us.
So if you're one of the white collar workers at home who are watching this, don't get offended, this is just normal.
Okay, episode 1. Let's stop bashing other people's jobs. Round shaped handlebars versus the carbon aero shaped with flat tops. That came from someone called Rocky Cycling. What's your quick verdict?
I would get the round top ones purely because then you can mount stuff to them, and at the speeds that I go at and you probably go at.
Speak for yourself, mate. Speak for yourself.
Well, how fast do you go at? What, 35 k's?
Yeah, something like that.
Ah, well, at that speed, round handlebars will be fine.
The flat top handlebars, if you don't like the position of the drops that they're set by, if you change them, you're changing the angle attack of your wing and you're giving yourself a load of drag. Yeah. So if you don't like the shape of the handlebars, you can't really twist them in the stem because otherwise you fuck up the aerodynamics. So I always pick round.
That is a very good point.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's why I have a YouTube channel. Lotus track bike, I've done a video on it.
I think ultimately you're measured by who wins. And okay, they won some of it, but they didn't win all of it. So based on that, I mean, I prefer the Argon 18 bike, if I'm honest. I think that's a superior bike. Yes, it did have the handlebar failure. I think, was it on the Australian cyclist?
There was a Bastion handlebar, but we'll come to 3D printing, that's another question. But you prefer the pure aerodynamics of the bike school of thought rather than bike and rider?
Yeah. The thing is, you can't design one bike for a fleet of people. There's too much variation in people. So you're trying to use aerodynamics where you move the fork legs out so they're in line with people's legs. Well, the distance between the forks and people's legs is going to vary. Whereas if you've just got a straight set of forks and make them fast, they'll always be in the same position. So that's my thought. I don't know what your thoughts are.
To actually comment on it, you're going to need to test it in a velodrome because, like you said, there's too many variables. We spoke about this before. The wetted area of the frame alone is probably double that of or maybe even 3 times that of the Argon 18 or something. But how it actually works in the team pursuit or whatever, I mean, we said that if it does have a gain of like a second a lap or 4 seconds over the whole event or whatever they're claiming, then how shit were the GB riders because they still didn't do very well. And if they were on normal bikes, they wouldn't have maybe not even qualified. But anyway, it's kind of hard to prove, I guess, that one. And only a few people in British cycling know the answer, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, I think they've bent the rules slightly because you're supposed to have a bike that any Tom, Dick or Harry can go and purchase. Well, realistically, you can't. You can't go and buy that bike, whereas you could go and buy the Argon 18 quite readily. It's
a Chinese mass-produced frame, so It's pretty simple in that respect.
Question for you is, what tools do you recommend? That came in from, well, quite a few people actually.
Do you want me to use my joke answer? GCN and Cycling Weekly. Tools. To be honest, nothing really expensive in my toolbox, unfortunately. There's a few Mitutoyo gauges. Allen keys tend to be quite cheap ones. Never use the ball end of an Allen key because it fucks up your screws. Well, never torque something up with a ball end anyway. Park tool tension meter for wheels is probably my most expensive thing in my toolbox, apart from some Mitutoyo gauges.
I don't think I've got any real bike-specific tools apart from the chain splitter. That's about it. The rest of it is just industrial gear. I can't think of anything bike-specific. Oh, maybe some tyre levers. Oh no, I use spoons.
Yeah, I don't use tyre levers. Never really feel the need to. Maybe it's just my technique is just optimal. So
see, my wrists aren't strong enough for that. So I'll bow down to your increased wrist strength.
My thumbing in technique. Mate, I couldn't even put that on YouTube, to be honest. All right, I've got another one. A video you did recently on the Zip and Princeton lawsuit.
Yeah.
Do the wavy rims actually work? Because we didn't address that in the video. Do they actually work? And if not, why?
The theory is they will work, but they'll only work in a finite speed range. And if you are outside that speed range, then the drag goes up quite dramatically. Now, the thing with those, what do you want to call them, undulations is, it's not like a clear-cut speed range, because you can have some external factors that affect how well those things work. So if you mount the wrong tyre onto the rim, then you'll basically negate all of the improvement effects. Now, again, how do you go and test it? Well, in a velodrome, you've got sort of slightly perturbed conditions. In a wind tunnel, you've got perfect conditions where the bike's not rocking. And then out in the field, you'd have to be going at a fair rate of knots for the advantage of those wheels to come into fruition. So we're looking like 50 Ks, 55 Ks, which most people can't achieve unless they're going downhill. So the short answer is no. I don't think they work.
That's interesting.
None of my
so it's just too specific.
It's too specific. It's like you said about those handlebars. It's okay until handlebars where the stem is integrated, I think is a bad idea, because you reduce the amount of adjustment you have. And the adjustment that you have to counter for, moving your head up and down will far outweigh the aerodynamic gain from having a snazzy set of handlebars. It will far outweigh it. So yeah, the bike looks nice, but you'll probably end up going slower unless you're a perfect fit onto the snazzy handlebars. Which brings us on to the Ribble bike. What do you think of the Ribble bike?
It looks heavy. It looks really heavy. And I know weight, like if you do the physics and whatever, weight doesn't really play that much of a bad role anymore. Not like for most people's riding or racing, we're not doing alpine routes or alpine races or Hope route or anything like that. But it's just nice to have. First of all, I just always like to have a light feeling bike. It just feels nice. The handlebars, I think, again, like you said, they're fully integrated. There's no adjustability there. So if you're the 1 out of 10 people that fit them and you can get your body in an aero position with that setup, then you're lucky. If they don't fit you and your body's not in the right position, that's far going to be way more detrimental than having an aero handlebar or doing some wake generation to shield your legs or whatever. So, and the thing that no one's picking up on with those bars is that they say that they're designed not to work with bar tape, right? So the drops and the hood area isn't designed to have bar tape on it, which for me is like, if I was a public insurance broker for Ribble, if I was head of Ribble, that's surely got to be a warranty nightmare. How many delaminated handlebars are you going to get that have been dropped at the cafe, or someone's lent their bike up for a photo, it's blown over in the wind, and then, oh look, it's fallen on the handlebar. People forget the job of the bar tape. Yeah, it's for grip, but it's also to protect your expensive handlebars, especially if they're carbon. So if you drop your bike at the cafe and it lands on the handlebars, which it will, have they delaminated? Probably yes. Are you going to see that? Probably no. Next couple of rides down the line, are they going to snap on you? Who knows? Like it's going to be a warranty nightmare. I would strongly encourage Ribble to tell their customers to wrap them with handlebar tape, because it just seems like they're opening a can of worms with warranties and carbon damage. Yeah, the rest of the bike, it just looks like the Cannondale System 6. When I saw the first pictures of it, I thought it was the Cannondale System 6. They've got that what they call the chine near the front fork. I don't know if that does anything at the Reynolds numbers we're talking about, but yeah. And like you said, they only seems to be using laminar CFD in these simulations, and all these CFD simulations, it's not actually, they're not doing it for the engineering know-how. Like when they make the 3D of the frame, they know what they want it to look like, right? But they do the CFD literally for marketing. It's literally so they can put it in the press pack.
Yeah, I
mean, it's not telling you jack shit.
No, CFD in transient conditions is notoriously inaccurate, so it doesn't get more transient than someone pedaling, really.
Yeah. And riding outside.
Riding outside, yeah. Just to add some more in, you know.
It's just it's CFD for marketing, in it, like bullshit, like the engineering term bullshit baffles brains. If you put something in that no one really understands as a consumer, it looks impressive, and you really don't have to vouch. You don't have to back it up. It's literally, you won't understand it, so I don't have to explain my CFD because you won't understand it. You're just a consumer.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if you look at engineering tools as a whole, you know, finite element analysis is way more accurate on a bike than CFD ever will be, if you ask me. I mean, for the people at home who are watching, finite element analysis is a structural tool, so it works out if your frame's going to break, basically. I think Gerard Ruman and Andy Kessler don't use it, but CFD is yeah, so that's the popular one, which is like a load of differential equations that you have to solve, and ANSYS Fluent is the tool of choice. But modelling transient conditions is just a waste of time, and then even sticking in a wind tunnel is largely a waste of time, if you ask me. So there you go. Unless you can model the transient conditions, which is difficult because they're going to have to get loads of people in there. So, my guidance would be, I don't know what yours is, but get a bike that fits.
It's all good about, you know, having an aero bike and an aero position, but is the aero position sustainable, and can you do your decent power in your aero position? So you really got to think about power divided by your body CDA. That's the most important thing. How long, if you can have a very small CDA, but if you can't do your power, maybe, okay, you're going to take a hit on your 30-minute power, but is your 30-minute power divided by that CDA better than your 30-minute power in a different position divided by that CDA? So you kind of just need to do shitloads of testing on your own outside to come up with that answer. But the only thing I do like about the Ribble bike actually is that progressive is a word that's bandied around a lot, but they have, I think, offered a very narrow handlebar.
Yeah.
Like much narrower than other brands will make, because they won't, you know, they're not going to open a mold for a 34 or 32 centimetre handlebar because they just won't sell any. But Ribble, I think, with Dan Bigham's input, have really shrunk the handlebar option, and that's good to see, because you get, even in the World Tour, you see guys with like shoulders, tiny shoulders, and then their wrists are kind of 1.5 times the width of their shoulders, and there's just a gaping hole there at the front of the bike. And I think a lot of those riders, speaking to people who know people in the World Tour, a lot of those riders have been given the chance to ride narrow handlebars, but the European riders, some of them are so old school, they just won't consider it. But I think it's good that Ribble are offering narrow handlebars, especially for like smaller riders and women as well, that can't get on a handlebar less than 36 centimetres. It's just crazy. I've gone smaller on my bars over the years. I'm down to 40, and I started on 44. If you're riding flats, you know, at steady state power, and you don't put much torque through the bike, then you can go super narrow. But steep climbs, you know, when you're out of the saddle, a really narrow bar, really, the reaction forces of your arms go up, basically, because you've got less of a moment to straighten the bike out.
A couple of people asked this, 7075 versus 6061.
For bike frames material?
Just as a general, because a lot of people, you know, because I don't really have so much of a preference, but your preference is always 7075, whereas I suppose from a machinist perspective, 6061's easy to deal with. But
so I think you're more of a machinist than I am, which is good, because I'm always the one putting the crazy materials and instructions on drawings and then not having anything to do with it. So I would always go with 7075, because I think actually a good thing about 6061 is it's easier to anodise. I think the 7075 is a bit trickier.
Just before we go any further, what we've neglected to say is a question came in. Someone asked, because some people aren't going to know, 7075 and 6061 are grades of aluminium or aluminum. Go on. Sorry, I interrupted.
You pointed out 6061 probably a bit easier to machine. It's probably easier to anodise, weld. But 7075, if you're making, true. If you're making a part with any sort of thread in it, I would always pick 7075 because of the yield strength basically being almost twice that of 6061. So a 7075 yield strength is on par with many mild steels, whereas 6061 is a lot softer. If you need hardness, I would pick 7075 because that's directly proportional to yield strength. But yeah, if you're making anything with steel fasteners going into it that have a lot of bolt preload, it's easy to round off threads with, or cheese up threads with 6061 basically. So if anything with threaded parts or needs that extra bit of yield strength, I'd always pick 7075.
All right.
T6 as well, obviously, it has to be heat treated, otherwise it's nothing.
No, true.
Right, I've got one that we can both answer. This one came from Aval Sirithanawat. I think I've pronounced that right. I think he's from Thailand. Could be wrong. This is going to ruffle a few feathers, right? Why are cycling journos less educated than automotive journos on debunking bullshit and marketing?
Do you want to go first? You go first.
Okay, so basically, let's take two very well-known automotive journalists, Jeremy Clarkson and Chris Harris.
Yeah. They
are so big in the automotive world in terms of TV and being celebrities and personalities. The brands, they can't pull any bullshit moves on them because their influence is too big. So even if Chris Harris has a public falling out with Ferrari, they will still send him cars to review and they will strive to better their product just to satisfy his review. And it's the same with Clarkson. But if Cycling Weekly or GCN go and slag off Canyon, their business model falls over overnight, and it just, unfortunately, they don't have as much influence. It's more of a cottage industry than automotive, and they basically have to suck up to the brand so much to get the business. It's just not going to work for them being that bullshit. So that's my answer. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
I think you're right. I think the business model, you can already see it. It's changing because people are now getting switched on to what a lot of GCN is, which is effectively a bit of an advertising channel for the most part. And the same with Road CC, Cycling Weekly. They're all based in Bath, Bristol area. And they're just getting journalists who like riding bikes. They don't really have a technical background. I think there's a couple of exceptions to that. There's one that I would say, and he's worth a mention, is James Huang, who works for, I think it's Cycling Tips. Now, when I watch him, I get the feeling he's got an engineering background. I don't know what you think, PT, if you've watched him, but I think he's got the calls on Angry Asian on Twitter.
Yeah.
He when I watch him, it looks like he's an engineer. I would say he was an engineer. Just the way he speaks and his mentality. So
I've seen James from Cycling Tips, and I would say, I would kind of agree. He toes the line of being a little bit edgy to the brands, but also kind of sucking them at the same time. And he toes the line well because he's obviously working for a big publication. I think Cycling Tips is Australian, isn't it?
I don't know.
I don't know if he's got an I don't know if he's an engineer. I think he may have been in like technical editor position for so long he's just learned stuff. That's my opinion. I'm not sure if he's an engineer by trade, but I might be wrong. Yeah.
I mean that's one aspect, and the other aspect is you've got brands now that are in emerging markets. So Windspace is a prime example. People have realised it. Before it was marketed as budget gear. It's not. It's this of very, very good quality, but it just doesn't have the badge
Yeah.
name yet.
Yet. But I think, those Chinese brands are definitely changing that. Definitely.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, if you go back, 25, 30, well, maybe a bit longer than that, 35 years ago, when Shimano came out of nowhere into the Tour de France, you know, they were effectively where the Chinese brands are now. Now, Shimano is the market leader.
Yeah.
And even Samsung. Samsung, when I was very young, was a budget brand, and everyone wanted Sony. Now, Samsung's like the expensive one, and it's the same thing's going to happen.
That's it. I think those Chinese brands are causing the Western brands a lot of worry, and they're shaking a little bit because, you know, it's supplier turned competitor. That's what it is, isn't it? It's like, the lowly Chinese carbon factory. No one really knows about them. We'll keep them quiet. We'll keep them, you know, in the background. And now they're facing up to the brands slowly, but it's going to happen. And they've got it all in their favour. Like, supply chains on their doorstep. They've got better prices, shorter lead times. Yeah, there are things that you could argue aren't ideal about Chinese manufacturing, but at the end of the day, when you're a consumer, it comes down to price and quality. People can say, oh, I don't agree with the morals, or I don't agree with sustainability, or the ECG rating, or whatever they call it now in corporate bullshit. But at the end of the day, when you're buying a product, you want a good product and you want it at the best price possible, and that's hard to argue with. So the Western brands need to figure something out, otherwise they're all going to go out of business.
Yeah, I think the first people to feel the pinch will be the wheel suppliers. So, I mean, you can see this happening, but originally there was just a few wheel suppliers. Mavic springs to mind, and then you had the rebranders, so the likes of Hunt, who were basically buying wheels from the Far East, whacking their name on them and then selling them off. But now you've got the people who were supplying Hunt supplying the wheels direct, and I don't think their business model is going to survive.
No, it can't do. It can't do. But don't forget, like, I think you and I and the viewers of these channels, unfortunately, I know you're a superstar and you've got however many thousands of subscribers, but we're still the minority. So there are people out there who won't even know that Chinese manufacturing is a thing, and they'll still buy Envy because they think it's a top quality American product.